Hello, this is the podcast edition of this week's Izai number 3, Is China the New Japan of the 1980s? There is no doubt that China is currently undergoing social and economic changes that will have a profound effect on both China and the world. Information sharing is one of the most far-reaching of these changes. Some sources estimate that the number of Chinese citizens using social media already exceeds 600 million. That is half of the population. Even though most of these social media users were prevented by censorship from reading about the recent Hong Kong democracy protests, the more tech-minded were able to circumvent the system by using virtual private networks. And they belong to an increasingly sophisticated army of users of technology in this huge country. Information sharing. Despite autocratic-style rule from Beijing, an educated, inquiring and restless middle class is emerging in China. For example, there is strong growth in citizen journalism, and more widely, information sharing, a tool with enormous capacity for influence and change. China is also emerging as a global leader in mobile services and devices. Tencent, owners of WeChat, Alibaba, Baidu and Weibo are just some of the major Chinese players in the digital world. This robust and very powerful network of mobile technology and social media providers is influencing what consumers are talking about, how they get information, how they find entertainment, socialize, connect, and shop. Such market competitive or cultural intelligence trends are all connected and present an extraordinary new challenge, as well as a tremendous opportunity for foreign firms. Gone are the days when all that was needed to succeed in China business was to understand the Guanxi relationship system and show patience and commitment. These values remain highly important, especially in more traditional forms of business and for the middle-aged and older generation. However, the new challenge and opportunity for Western businesses is to discover which companies are making the most of this space, what consumers are talking about, how consumers get information, how they find entertainment, socialize, connect, and shop. Thousands of years ago, China was a center of invention and innovation. Paper, gunpowder, the compass. But since opening up in the 1980s, China has built a reputation rather like that of Japan in those pre-boom years, as an imitator, stealer, and integrator of Western intellectual property. Japan lost this reputation through genuine innovation. So far, China has not. Until recently, that is. According to veteran China business expert Sean Ryan in his upcoming book, The End of Copycat China, most of the innovation is fairly incremental, or what he calls Stage 2, along the innovation curve. Chinese firms, he says, are innovating for China specifically and focusing on business model innovation rather than invention, like the paper, the gunpowder, the compass we talked about. But this is changing as real profits are to be made by focusing on innovation itself and as the legal climate gradually improves. Ryan points out that Steve Jobs at Apple did not really invent much. There were mobile phones and MP3 players long before the iPod and iPhone. But what made Jobs brilliant was his ability to improve on current offerings to meet unmet market demands. That, he says, is innovation at its finest, and that is what Chinese firms are becoming good at. Like Japan in the 1990s, Chinese entrepreneurs and venture capitalists have woken up to the fact that in order to grow and compete globally, they can no longer simply rely on copying Western countries' technologies and business models. Instead, they have to build their own innovative products for the Chinese market and eventually innovate for the global market. The new challenge. If you transpose this awakening to the social and political sphere, it is hard not to think that China's growing entrepreneurialism, its free thinking, the free thinking of its social media users, the rising level of education and travel, and the effects of globalization on both consumer industries and start-up venture capitalists, will create an entirely new and exciting challenge both for the citizens of China and for foreign businesses. For example, it is thought that many of the greatest advances in the world in biotechnology will stem from China. Overall, the market is maturing in China. Competition is intensifying and companies are moving up the value chain. As they do so, many entrepreneurs are wondering how to be competitive. Not through low costs, not through sales and distribution, but through innovation. This is the challenge that foreign businesses face in China. It is no longer enough to learn the basic Confucian values and the nuances of business etiquette and different mindset to get ahead in China business. On the other hand, even though social media and innovative technologies are globalizing forces, in China it is best to remember that everything comes, quote, with Chinese characteristics, unquote. Innovation is no exception. I'd love to hear from you if you have tips or comments about doing business in China or in other parts of Asia. You can leave them at my blog, www.davidcliveprice.com/blog. And of course, please subscribe if you want more on-the-ground intel like this. Just add yourself to the subscription box on www.davidcliveprice.com, and you can also subscribe to this podcast on iTunes.